started astral projecting more and more, and I saw deeper into the future, and I was like, yo, we basically have to create a group of all indigos. We have to come together, you know, create our music, and like eventually we're gonna have to like be about our message, which is taking over the government. So I guess on some 47 shit, that's our next step, you know?
That's optional.
About to one take this shit, nigga.
So before we get into the video on Pro Era and Capital Steez'S, I quickly want to touch on the Bull Lodge, its influence on hip-hop, golden era hip-hop. And also I want to say, and I don't want to use the word crazy, because a lot of these words that are being used nowadays and our most popular words are really bad words. So I don't really want to use that word, but it's interesting how this video literally came to me. I had this guy yesterday talk about 47 and Capital Steez'S out of nowhere in the Discord, and that was a really enjoyable conversation. And I haven't thought about Capital Steez'S or Pro Era in over a decade now, and then guys started commenting on my last video also mentioning Steez'S, and I was like, alright bro, I have to make a video on this, I have to talk about this now. The color bull itself has carried associations with things like coolness, coldness, but within the Masonic tradition, the Bull Lodge represents the beginning of a journey towards greater knowledge, and symbolically towards the light. So basically, whenever you're a Mason and you start progressing through the ranks, you're gonna start out at the Bull Lodge. Whether you interpret the light as genuine enlightenment or as what could be described as a false or even blinding light, the symbolism is worth considering. So we have the Bull Lodge having an effect on golden era hip-hop, where hip-hop music was much more diverse, where we had a lot of sub-genres of the genre of hip-hop. Conscious rap hip-hop being one of those sub-categories in the genre, like Capital Steez'S and Pro Era hip-hop. The conscious rap or lyrical rap was a category that was primarily positive, some called it knowledge rap even. After the golden era, that specific category of rap started to get cut out of the equation for obvious purposes and reasons. The category started to get demonized and politicized, used for pushing political and radical ideas. There was a move behind the scenes to push a particular type of conscious rap, one that can help them bridge and push gangster rap, that was in the beginning considered street knowledge rap. Best example being NWA, who claimed to be kicking street knowledge. And I don't know if you guys know this, but a lot of people don't, but someone like Eazy, for example, was heavily influenced by occult and satanic agendas and ideas. So the result being the youth taking pride in vocabulary, knowledge, seeing knowledge as power. Bull Lodge had a great effect on music. That same category of hip-hop, being conscious rap, experienced a major modern rise again in hip-hop. In 2012, with Pro Era, Capital Steez'S, there are certain numbers that become so strongly associated with a person that eventually you can't talk about that person without talking about the number. For Capital Steez'S, that number was 47. It appeared in lyrics, artwork, it became part of identity of Pro Era, and Steez'S himself described 47 as representing a kind of a balance between the heart and the mind. But then something very tragic happened that made the number 47 much more difficult to dismiss as simply an artist's favorite number. On December 23rd, 2012, Capital Steez'S died at just 19 years old. And when people began looking back at the dates, numbers, symbols, and imagery surrounding his life and death, they began seeing connections everywhere. Some people saw coincidences, others saw something much more deeper. And one document in particular, 47 Friends, the ritual sacrifice of capital Steez, takes that idea to an extreme. It argues that Steez's death was not simply a tragic suicide, but a part of a ritual involving numerology, Gematria, symbolism, and occult tradition. Why was a 19-year-old rapper from Brooklyn so deeply interested in numbers, consciousness, spirituality, symbolism, and hidden knowledge in the first place? And when you start looking at the question, you end up somewhere very unexpected. Freemasonry, more specifically the Blue Lodge. To understand capital Steez, we first have to understand the environment he came from. New York hip-hop has always had a strong relationship with knowledge. This was music that encouraged people to think, to learn, to question, to develop vocabulary, to understand history, to understand themselves. Knowledge wasn't something you were embarrassed to have, it was something you could take pride in. And that distinction is important because hip-hop wasn't originally just about entertainment. It was also a form of communication, a way of passing information from one person to another. And New York was the center of that culture. Fast forward several decades, the mainstream sound of hip-hop has changed dramatically. But around 2010 to 2012, something interesting began happening in New York. A younger generation started bringing back the sound and spirit of the 1990s hip-hop. And one of the most important groups in that movement was Pro Era. Joey Badass, the breakout star. But behind the movement was another figure, who in many ways was even more mysterious. Capital Steez. Who was Capital Steez? Capital Steez was born Jamal Dewar and came out of Brooklyn. He was one of the founding members of Pro Era and one of the central creative figures behind the movement. And what immediately separates Steez from many rappers of his generation is the subject matter. He wasn't simply talking about money, women, violence, or fame. He was talking about consciousness. He was talking about the third eye. He was questioning American culture. He was questioning the media. He was questioning the reality he had been given. On his project, American Corruption, Steez described his goal as getting the public to open their third eye so that people could begin to see beyond what they were being shown. That doesn't necessarily mean he had discovered some secret master plan, but it does tell us something about how he was thinking. He was looking beneath the surface. And then there is number 47. So why 47? According to the explanation associated with Steez and Pro Era, 47 represented ballots. The fourth chakra is associated with the heart. The seventh is associated with the crown. So 4, 7 represented the heart and the mind, emotion and intellect. And the goal was balance between the two. Whether or not you personally accept that spiritual framework, there is no question that 47 became central to Steez's identity. It wasn't hidden, it was everywhere. Pro Era members incorporated it into their names. The group's imagery incorporated it, and Steez designed a logo based around the number. But that's where things became more interesting, because 47 has another history. A history that exists completely independently of capital Steez, and that history brings us to geometry. The document calculates that the distance between Joey Badass's birthday and capital Steez's birthday was exactly 169 days. And the distance between Steez's birthday and his death was 169 days again. 169. And 169 has an interesting mathematical property. 13 times 13. The number 13, another number loaded with cultural and religious symbolism. And this is where the investigation starts moving away from biography and into gematria. Also guys, I'm gonna link the source material down below so you guys can check it out for yourself, as always. Gematria is an old system in which letters are assigned numerical values. A word becomes a number, a name becomes a number, and if two words produce the same number, they can be interpreted as symbolically connected. The document applies this system to Steez'S story, and according to its calculations, capital Steez is 47, and then comes the detail that makes the entire story so compelling. The word suicide. It also calculated as number 47 under cipher being used. Now pause for a second, because this is where you have to be careful. A numerical match doesn't prove that two things are causally connected. If you choose a particular cipher and search enough words, dates, and names, you're going to find coincidences. That's mathematics, but here's the problem. Steez himself already had an obsession with 47. So when the number appears around the circumstances of his death, it becomes psychologically difficult to ignore. And that's exactly what makes the story so creepy. December 23rd, 2012. Capital Steez was only 19 years old. He died after falling from the roof of the cinematic music group headquarters in Manhattan. His death was ruled as suicide, but the circumstances surrounding it have remained a source of discussion amongst fans. And according to the document, shortly before his death, Steez tweeted 2 words, "The end." The timestamp, 11:59 p.m., 1 minute before midnight. The document interprets that moment symbolically, 11:59. The hands of the clock are almost at the very top, the apex, and the theory connects that image to occult symbolism surrounding the highest point of the pentagram. But here is the crucial question. Was Steez deliberately creating some kind of ritual symbolism, or did the author connect unrelated symbols after the fact? We don't actually know. And that uncertainty is what makes this mystery so fascinating. Also, I want to point out, when you Google the tweet, there are different images with different timestamps, so I don't really know how that works, but yeah, I just wanted to put that out there. The word apex appears again. Steez's final solo project included a song called Apex. And the document argues that the song's imagery, lyrics, and location from another piece of the puzzle. There is satanic imagery, there is subway station, there is the idea of rising toward a peak and then falling from one. The symbolism is almost too perfect. Almost. Because symbolism is powerful. Precisely because humans are incredibly good at finding meaning. We connect dots. Sometimes these dots really aren't connected. Sometimes we draw the line ourselves. The author of the document goes much further. The theory argues that the entertainment industry has historically benefited from deaths of young artists. One artist dies, another artist rises. One career ends, another explodes. And the theory interprets this as a kind of Faustian bargain, a sacrifice in exchange for success. Capital Steez becomes the central example, because Pro Era was beginning to gain momentum, Joey Badass was becoming increasingly famous, and Steez was gone. Maybe the most disturbing part of the story isn't whether some secret organization sacrificed Capital Steez. We don't have reliable evidence proving that. The disturbing part is something much simpler. A 19-year-old artist died at the exact moment his career was beginning to take off. He left behind music filled with symbolism, coded language, and ideas about consciousness. He had an unusual relationship with the number 47, and after his death, people began reconstructing his final days throughout those symbols, trying to find an explanation, trying to find a reason, trying to believe that something so sudden, so young, and so tragic couldn't possibly have been meaningless. And maybe that's why conspiracy theories surrounding celebrity deaths are so powerful. They turn chaos into a story. They turn tragedy into a puzzle, and they turn a dead artist into a mystery that never dies. If you made it this far into the video, first of all, I appreciate you. Thanks for watching, and if you want to join our Discord, the Discord is gonna be linked on my YouTube channel, so you guys can check it out and maybe join the community. And also, I appreciate the massive feedback and support I got from few of my last videos. But yeah, that's gonna be it for this one. Peace.